my business has been historically primarily insurance, employee benefits, different types of professional services for HR and finance teams. And it just so happens that I had clients who were hotel operators and real estate developers and friends who are in the hospitality business, including on the kind of bespoke small batch distillery side, as well as in wine distribution and marketing. So I always found it to be a super interesting business. And, I think there's a lot that's very similar about the relationship between insurance companies and their distribution forces and the large labels versus the small labels and how they have to view distribution. I think there's a lot that's very analogous.
It really is.
Interesting.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you brought the comparison over there. And because that's one of when I learned, there was a part where I was going to leave the industry where I thought I wanted to leave completely. And it was because I felt like all I could do was sell alcohol and there was no other thing to do, but I didn't want to sell alcohol anymore. And I just needed a break. And so I didn't realize there was other avenues within the industry and things like that. But with that, I had gone out and did a bunch of interviews, and I had started to be recruited by obviously the insurance agencies. Were seeing that parallel. And I respect what you said there, because that's immediately when I sat through my first interview with them, was looking at it like, oh, you're managing a portfolio. And it's like, and taking that. And once you realize, when let's talk about sales, for example, someone who's a silo operated singular brand salesperson versus a portfolio salesperson, those are two different people.
Yeah, totally agreed.
So walk me through, like, when you're walking in, and for you, even like the questions about the alcohol is kind of the same for you, where every single situation, there's not really a formula. There's a formula to an extent, but everybody's circumstances are directly affect the variables of the outcome of whether it's their pricing, their coverage, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. So like when I started in this business, I was a student at Penn State in the business school, and I had sort of come to the conclusion that I was more interested in being in business than studying business. And as a junior at school, I found my way to a career fair and a local financial advisory firm. And I was describing this kind of feeling to them. And they said, well, if you're interested in stock brokerage and financial planning and life insurance sales, we can register you, and you can get a taste of what that would feel like as a career while you're still a student, if you're willing to commit to getting to certain levels of production over the course of the year, et cetera. So I did that. It was with a company called Robert W. Baird and Company, which is a subsidiary of Northwestern Mutual. And I did that for a couple of years. But then when I graduated from college, I built like a customer base and a little bit of expertise. And I liked it, but I didn't love it for a variety of reasons. But then I discovered working with small businesses and group health insurance and employee benefits. And I thought, oh man, I really love that. So I found my way to a small insurance agency based in this part of Pennsylvania. It's like there's Pittsburgh in the west, and then there's Philadelphia in the east, and then there's the rest of us in places like York and Harrisburg and State College.
Well,
I
some people
joined
I've
them.
heard call us Pennsyltucky.
I've heard it described a couple of different ways, and Pennsyltucky would be one of the more benign ones. So I ended up starting there as a salesperson, and then over the course of time discovered that all the things I loved about it for small businesses were also there for bigger businesses, and then they were also there for governments and school districts. And then I had this opportunity to buy part of the business and move into the management and leadership of the business. And I discovered, a lot of the things I loved about working with the clients, I also loved from an organizational development and a leadership perspective. And I ended up going back to school and studying all this at NYU. And then we ended up selling the business. And I ended up working for a very large firm. We left, and I think that the group I left was And maybe we were 35 or 40 people. And the next thing you know, I'm leading these offices in a company context that's got 5,000 people. And it's a good organization, a lot of really nice people there. And I miss a lot of them, but I really didn't like that so much. And I left. So then about a year and a half ago, just thinking about what to do next, I was doing some consulting for people I knew in grad school and different types of business transactions for insurance agencies and doing some management consulting for a medical device company based out of Israel. But I sort of missed the building part of the business and thought that I saw a trend coming in the health benefits world that was not really being responded to by the big global brokers. And that maybe there would be an opportunity in the market to fulfill some needs that other organizations were kind of ignoring. And so we formed Valhalla Business Advisors about not quite a year and a half ago to try to fill that gap in the market. And so far so good. It's been going according to plan.
Excellent. What type of businesses are you currently? What industries are you currently working with?
It's very interesting. So do a fair amount. The majority of our book of business right now is actually in healthcare. So it's interesting because healthcare providers, by virtue of the staffing, are also very meaningful consumers of healthcare. And I think because of the fact that we speak that language so well and we have so much expertise working with these types of medical providers directly, that we have a sort of unique advantage there. But in my career, I also did a lot in technology, have a lot of history serving hospitality, hotel, restaurants, real estate development, etc. Fair amount of software, actually. So those would be the municipal governments, school districts, etc. But right now, biggest pocket of our business is actually healthcare.
And are you talking of large networks, healthcare networks, or you mean like independent private practices, or all of the above, and everybody's an opportunity at this point?
Yeah, it's interesting because there are things that are very similar, whether you're talking to a very small privately owned physician practice or a multi-specialty practice that includes ambulatory surgery centers, or a true health system that spans all sorts of different business functions and kind of therapeutic modalities. We have served all of them, and we would like to serve across the spectrum. At this particular point, I think, it's all across the board at this point.
And so, walking through, like, what's the different, without giving away any of your secrets, kind of what are some of the different approaches that you take that sets you apart from some of the other? Is it the services, the value, not necessarily from a monetary standpoint, but kind of walk me through when somebody's in the process. Let's say I'm just hitting the 100 employee mark, or that Mendoza line, and I got to start researching what's going on.
Yeah, it's really good. That's an interesting question. And actually, so the single biggest differentiator for us compared to the folks we tend to compete with, which would be I'd say the 20 largest agencies in the United States. If you look at those 20 agencies, there's one thing that none of them can provide that we do, which is a true fiduciary contract for service. It's sort of unbelievable that even in today's day and age, I don't know if we're pushing 20 years since Elliot Spitzer's work in New York around conflicts of interest with these types of distribution relationships. But even today, if I'm representing your firm for the purchase of health benefits, and there's a half dozen different insurance companies that are plausibly capable of delivering for you, but two of them give me very big bonuses to sell their products, I have in the industry no prohibition against accepting these incentive payments. And the consequence of that is that the marketplace has become incredibly entangled between the biggest brokers in the market and the biggest insurance companies in the market. And the folks that are getting caught in between, in my view, are the customers and their families. It's causing them to pay more and have worse service because of this kind of perverse set of relationships. And what's happening in the industry is the brokers are consolidating more and more and more, and the insurance companies are consolidating more and more and more. So what you end up with is fewer and fewer, bigger and bigger people appearing to compete with one another to benefit the customer. But in fact, what's happening is it's also more of a collusion, if you will, to try to protect one another's spot in the stream at the expense of the customer. And that's like our biggest differentiation. Now, don't get me wrong, like every customer that's got 1,000 employees and multiple locations and stop loss insurance is going to demand certain levels of sophistication for underwriting and finance, for compliance, for communications, etc. And we have all of these capabilities, some of which we've internalized and some that we contract out to best-in-class partners that we've curated. But in our experience, the way the market's going, customers are veering more towards, like Wayne Gretzky had this thing about skating to where the puck is going, not to where it is. I think that where the market is going is customers are going to say more and more, we want the solutions to work, but whether they're coming all from a single firm or from a group of collaborative independent firms, we prefer that we're getting a true fiduciary relationship where they're just saying that our interest is all they're really worried about and that they're not conflicted. And that if giving up the kind of single logo in terms of who's delivering that doesn't like cause them complication or increase cost, they're happy to do it. And that's what we found over the market. And we think that that'll be a trend that continues. Does that make sense?
It 100% made sense. No, I was following you through there, and it's really, it's it's interesting. It's how do you present that in a way though, like it's fascinating though when you look at two different things. So I also do a lot in sales and marketing, and obviously with that you also have a big referral network where referrals sometimes are handshakes and just literally referrals, and sometimes there's compensation involved. I've also found that it gets a little dicey sometimes when you're in that space, as well as like I've sat down with other financial advisors and things like that, and you begin to question when the brochures keep coming out, and you question like what was the filtration process, the qualification of that product to be. Is it because it's a good match for me, or is it because it's a 25% kickback over a 10% kickback? And that really always made me weary of that world. You know what I mean? And I think that it's a breath of fresh air to hear what your approach is and how you guys are managing that. So with that being the philosophy, what are your revenue streams that how you guys make money to stay in business without having like 1,000 referrals feeding in and stuff like that? So
we primarily get our compensation from two sources. We take direct fees from our clients, where we enter into an agreement with our customer, and it says, that what you're looking for as a business are these services on this level of frequency, and that in exchange for providing those services, we will charge you a monthly fee of X dollars, and we invoice and collect. The second stream is from the insurance companies as a commission payment. Oftentimes it's one or the other, but it could be both. When we get into the situation where the insurance companies are paying us, it creates the opportunity for confusion around this fiduciary standard. The way that we cope with that is by expressly instructing the insurance companies to disregard and basically disenroll us from any such incentive program. We disclose that directly on our website as well, believe it or not. And to the extent that there are certain insurance companies in certain markets where they're not able to operationalize like a removal of these incentive payments. And that's mostly true for small business,
Right.
where they just literally can't operationalize a different strategy based upon a consultant trying to be different. We just made the commitment that every month where such a payment comes in, we pay it to we donate it to a nonprofit in the community. So it's sort of a strange thing, and every now and again we get these payments of a couple hundred or a couple $1,000s, and it's incentive comp for some incentive program that we never even realized we were party to. And it makes for a good excuse to connect with the local food bank or United Way or charity in the community where our customers. We did one to it wasn't Toys for Tots, but it was something like it was called a Wolfie Pack Girl Scout troop up in the Hudson Valley of New York. They were able to make some Christmas purchases based on one of these bonus payments.
I just saw the other day, like, that's a unique way to give back to your community. I saw yesterday, I was hopping on to book a discovery meeting with somebody, and just to talk to them, and it was a $9.99 fee for the discovery meeting, and I was like, that's really weird. And then I looked underneath them, and it was like 100% donated to charity. And so you just to have a discovery meeting, they were charging you, but they were donating it all. And I actually I have the Post-it note on my desk where I'm like, I give myself 7 days on something like that, and you might next week see me having something like that as well, because it stuck with me as like a really unique, just, I don't know, something that makes a fee that nobody cares about. You know what I mean? A cup of coffee or 2 cups of coffee, and could end up being a $1,000 check at the end of the month or something like that. So, but that's the world of benefits, and it fascinates me, and I find people like yourself are fascinating me even more, that are able to break things down in a way that it's challenging. And it's a challenging thing for someone that's not in the industry for benefits to grasp what goes on in benefits. And somebody like yourself, sometimes it involves somebody, for me personally, in my anecdotally from my life, I can't understand when somebody's presenting very textbook-esque and very like a way of things. And I think that's where I get lost sometimes in benefits meetings. And I think that what your approach is, you basically are being the most authentic and genuine way of directing somebody towards health benefits. And I think that there's a power in that immediately caught my attention, to kind of like, I didn't even realize that when I reached out to you, that's what you guys have. And I think is a core value. There's a real power in that. And it really was be like, you know what, he doesn't care about that extra dollar. I mean, he already knows what he's making or whatever else. And it's like, I think I respect that, and I think that there's a good thing to it, and I think more people need to be like that. For you, as your business, are you guys remote? Like, anybody around the country can connect with you as a client, or are you strictly in a certain mile radius of your office, or how do you guys generate types of clients, and who's kind of an ideal client for you?
So when we decided to form this venture, it was with the recognition that I had previously sold a similar sort of a business in 2017. And I entered into an agreement that precludes me from taking my old customers back until 2027. So the first thing we did to go look for new customers, because they have to all be net new, was just to reach out to the network. And it was very interesting, because our friends and former colleagues that were not subject to this type of agreement, a lot of them, of course, are in Pennsylvania just because they've moved around. So we got hired a little bit by that. We also have a good network in the Metro New York area. I reached out to a bunch of classmates from NYU and was really pleasantly surprised at the number who had some discretion over who they worked with for this sort of stuff. And then then translated that into being happy to work with us. So that's been super, super fun and rewarding. Besides like having the business succeed, it's also nice to be able to work with friends and know that you're making a difference with what they have going on day to day. At this point, our marketing is primarily referral and related to some events that we host from time to time. So like, for example, we have a pocket of really nice healthcare clients in the Lancaster market and Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And to reinvest into the community, into Lancaster, and to continue to look for some more growth, we're hosting a panel of some thought leaders in the Lancaster market that include topics of like data and evolving fiduciary standards for health plans, number one. Number two, we have a physician executive from University of Pennsylvania at the Lancaster General Hospital who's going to do a talk about these therapies for weight loss and diabetes called GLP-1s. And that's going to be awesome because it's a big deal for all healthcare and larger employers. They're also very expensive but impactful, with some footnotes because it's very new, so we're learning about them. And the final panelist will be an executive from a regional healthcare provider called Orthopedic Associates of Lancaster. And he's going to give us a talk about how, as a medium to large size employer, you can actually create advantage for your firm and its employees by, instead of going to him and the firm through insurance contracts, just contracting with them directly. And what are the benefits to that? How do you operationalize that, et cetera, will be a topic of conversation. So the way that we're trying to generate some more awareness of our firm is by basically funding the event and then just inviting people. And our idea is the speakers are amazing, the topics are important, so therefore people should be naturally interested in coming. And we'll never actually ask for business. We'll just hand out business cards and hopefully it generates goodwill. And in my experience, it usually does. This has been an effective approach to business development that I've used over the course of the years. Not necessarily the fastest approach, but given enough time, it tends to build enduring relationships.
Oh, absolutely. And what's the date of this in Lancaster?
It is April 12th at
Okay.
Spooky Nook in Mannheim.
Yeah,
And I'm happy to get you the invitation.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, yeah, I'll mark that off on the calendar. Yeah, I've been out to Spooky Nook plenty of times. My daughter plays volleyball out there, so I've spent many weekends in Spooky Nook.
It's a very, very amazing facility.
It is. It
nice.
Really is, and it's one of those. If anybody's ever driving through, even if you're not a fan of sports, just checking out the layout and logistics of it is just it's a very impressive facility.
Totally agreed.
Well, that really, I actually, so we may end up meeting in person quicker than anything. So that's awesome. So that's perfect there. When you're going out and looking at different businesses, how do you guys utilize the remote world and everything like that? Are you utilizing, are you doing webinars, or how's that like as far as that goes, or is it strictly still kind of like as much as possible on that? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say too is how do you like every single person, every industry I say, how do you create engaging content about what you do? I think it's the same thing I would ask you. Like, do you guys, are there companies that are out in that industry that can come in and help with specific marketing and things like that too? Or is it also, how does all that stuff come through?
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting questions we're still wrestling with about the ideas of social engagement and social proof and brand awareness and virality, et cetera. I think there's a lot to be figured out there that we're wrestling with. If you told me in 2014 that in 2024 I'd be sitting with customers of the size and sophistication that we have for regular remote meetings and consultation around the country the way that we are, including Florida, Metro New York, Chicago, Indianapolis, of course, Pennsylvania, Boston. I don't know that I would have entirely believed it. But this new world of the acceptance of this like virtual approach to meeting, it's sort of amazing. I do think that there's something lost when the meetings are primarily kept virtually and there's the lack of face-to-face. But what's gained is the fact that I could literally today be on 2 calls in Florida, 1 call in Metro New York, and 2 calls in Pennsylvania, including to York, Pennsylvania, and never run late.
Mhm.
And I think that there's a lot there. And then when you layer on top of that the ability for firms like ours to, at scale, competently deliver additional services through technology like HR and benefit administration systems that can speak through API to insurers and create efficiencies that
Mhm.
I would have only dreamt about 15 years ago. And we can do it with a small team. It's sort of wonderful. Um,
It is, and it's hard. Like it's got to be hard though too. Like my cousin, she works over in Lancaster as a financial advisor, and
hmm,
one of the things we were talking about recently was I was helping her like with some like social media work and sales coaching and things like that. As she's in a different role, more of an outbound role than she'd ever been before. So it's a whole new world of the different positioning. With that said, it was her struggle with way social media is today, and we deal with it in the consulting world and everything like that too. And those of us that have been in it for 20 years versus those that went to a course online a year ago, and then all of a sudden they're teaching you how to do it, and it's like
yeah.
she has trouble with the she calls them like the TikTok financial advisors, and I'm sure that you probably have the same ones that you've seen online where they're just, for lack of better phrasing, talking out of their ass. So,
It's easy to make commitments about the things that uh, customers want, but sometimes actually delivering on these things is more complicated. And there are plenty of stories of business success of people who exaggerate claims of what their benefits are that end up succeeding because they get enough people to buy into it, and occasionally it works.
economies of
But
scale, you're bound to step on it, you know? Yeah.
yeah, my whole thing is that just seems like an awful way to live your life, to always have the stress of these sorts of things behind you or on top of you or whatever it is.
What I used to
So
think,
yeah,
it's like it's the difference of do you remember when you were getting a job interview and somebody would ask you some existential question like, if you were an animal, what animal would you be? And I always hated that question, and it was like the worst question in the world. But on the flip side, I find that this is where we are right now, is the animal question versus the give me a real world scenario question and then I'll figure it out for you on the spot, versus telling you I'm going to be a cheetah because I like to, whatever. And it's one of those things where it's the exact same thing here now. Is people, whether it's the food you're consuming or it's the services you're purchasing, people now are so much smarter, and there's so much, there's not the veil is gone. It's not the days of being able to wow someone with a brand campaign that just, it doesn't work the way it works. So that's one of the reasons I was asking if it's the same revolution that's going on in that industry, where it's like marketers are really throwing things at the wall trying to figure out what works, because every day it's different. And I go back to like I think of like I'm a big fan of Ryan Reynolds since forever as an actor. And then, but I then became a bigger fan later on in life as he became, in the business world. And one of the things I read about him that was the most fascinating things is the reason he succeeds so much in marketing is because he has an entire team on standby that, might one day be doing something, but might one day be doing nothing, but they're on standby because whatever the most striking data point of trending things is in that moment, he's able to deploy them into a campaign strategy that can launch within 24 to 48 hours and ride the trend. And I was just thinking to myself, I was like, being that nimble, like, and being that ability to pivot, and he's just churning out billion-dollar sales and hundred, and it's just like people are like, oh, he's so lucky because he's an actor. It's like, actually, that's not it. It's not because he's an actor. It's because of that one decision he made. And he takes the risk. And some days and some weeks they're not working. They're just sitting in a room, or they're at home. And then some weeks they're going 24 hours a day nonstop. But he chooses the right people that are into that and into that lifestyle and have that skill set that can start and stop on a dime and really like go wherever. And I think that what we're talking about too is relative. It's finding what works and what people are good at and what people are passionate at. And you're in a situation where you guys are pioneering a new way to approach benefits. And it's a way that is full of trust, and it's full of authenticity, and it's full of a showing, not selling mentality. And I appreciate and I respect that.
No, thank you. Yep. We will continue to work at it, and hopefully we continue to see customers as they have, but with their feet away from the kind of old model to this approach. But I will also tell you, Nate, it's been interesting because I also know that sometimes we tell the story and the customers nod their heads and they hire us. And then we ask them subsequently, like, why did you hire us? And they're like, oh, we just sort of like you. It's like all these ideas about disrupting the model and the misalignment of incentives and like the nature of the conflicts of interest, et cetera. There's also something to be said about just getting out there and meeting people and giving them a chance to be heard and like feeling a connection. And that still is, I think, if for every customers we have that hire us based on the fiduciary story, I bet you we end up telling the story 100% of the time, but I bet you 2/3 of the time they don't even buy from us for that reason. It's an interesting thing.
Well, it's interesting, and it's exemplary to what you guys are doing it's a testament to what you're doing, because not many, you'd be surprised how many people, and I sit with brands for 20 years now. I've been with brands, CPG brands and all this stuff. You'd be surprised, and I'm not going to throw a number out there, but I'm going to say you'd be surprised how many can't tell their own story. And it's like, and it's only because, and it's whether it's a self-confidence in themselves that they're not confident that anybody wants to hear the story, or I've sat down with them and like we've been in these, I've sat down to redesign an entire brand, entire packaging, the whole company and all that stuff. And before we knew it, they were like, oh, they had all the hues and all the colors printed out and all the stuff, and they knew what they wanted. And they were like, this is going to be easy. And I walked in and completely asked them one question and said, why did you do this? And then they're like, well, because we wanted to prepare for the meeting. No, not this meeting. Why did you start this business? It then turned into a 2-hour presentation, basically visual, not visual, but the stories they told. And I just sat back and took my pen, and I'm talking, this was 10 years ago. And I just took my pen and just kept writing down all the different phrases that came out. And then eventually what happened was, it wasn't the color, and it wasn't the phrasing, and it wasn't anything like that. Their entire brand changed overnight, and it was them. The brand was always there, but they covered it up with all these other distractions and all these colors and all these neons. And at the end of the day, it was their family story. And then and since they pivoted and made that change, they've never looked back. And how crazy it is that we live in this post-COVID world where just being ourselves is actually a valuable thing. When pre-COVID, we were told that we had to be part of the bigger picture, and we couldn't veer off the track, and being an entrepreneur was risky, and doing all these things yes, being an entrepreneur is risky. I'm not sugarcoating it for anybody. If you want to get into that world, please understand it is brutal. And but outside of the entrepreneurship of everything, it's like, be yourself and be real. And I just am so excited to organically realize that that's such a core value of what your business is. That really excited me right now. So
yeah, that's cool. Well, that makes me happy. Thank you.
Well, here, I'll tell you why. Exactly. Here's a real life thing is with all these podcast guests, and actually we have a few minutes here, so maybe you can help me work through this. I want to create something called the FreeMind Flow, which is basically trusted. Basically, it's trusted people that have been guests on the podcast. And if my clients or other people want to know, hey, who do you recommend for HR? Who do you recommend for taxes? Who do you recommend for co-packing? I want to be able to be like, here's the FreeMind Flow, and here's the people that are in there. I also understand that there's a management aspect of that's administrative and costly. So it's like, how do you trickle that out and then have that self-sustain itself in an authentic and genuine way? Because in real time, you're having me kind of analyze in the back of my mind how that would work out. I appreciate your perspective.
Yeah, I think it probably depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to create, I probably think about that a little bit more, Nate.
Yeah.
I think there is a really interesting idea there.
Because that's where I want to go your route. but I also want to realize that there's cost involved in properly doing something, whether it be the marketing of the program or the webs, because there's,
Yeah,
the landing page of the website, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah,
I
we
know.
don't have to think about it on the spot. We can actually email back and forth, but it's something I really, you've made an impact on me when you're talking about it. So
I think that I've got a couple of different groups that come to mind that I think you could draw from as analogs. And one of them is around employee benefit solutions. And his name, there's actually two of them. I'll email you their names. They're escaping me at the moment. But then there's also the Vistage CEO group that I think you could draw some things from. I think there's a chapter down towards you. I've talked at a couple of their groups.
nice.
And I guess you'd have to ask yourself like whether you want it to be specific to hospitality or more broad than that.
Yeah,
Because
it's been interesting. The services, and actually, it's been from the podcast is podcast guests coming back and being like, "Hey, I saw this about your story. I saw this on your resume," and coming back. And I've been doing a lot of customized work with podcast guests actually, and we have like I think 100 booked for the rest of this year so far. And
that's cool.
yeah, the goal is to do 2 to 3 publications a week. And it really was to meet as many people as possible this year. And then with that FreeMind flow, connect as many people as possible. So each week I'm kind of dumping the guests into this group and then just letting them organically kind of flow in with everybody else. And so far it's working out nice. And I poke a little bit every once in a while I'll drop an article in the group every once in a while to see if people engage and stuff like that. So I'm sure I'll pick your brain a little bit more. And I'll be sending a lot of people your way. I think I like your mission. I like your motto. I like not to say motto and make it chintzy or anything like that, but make it the core value that you have is just being real. And I think that's all that people follow this podcast for is authenticity. There's a reason we do it the way we do. And I appreciate you taking the time today. And just one last time, get everybody your name, company, and kind of where they can find you online and social media and all that jazz.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So my name is Jens Thorsen. Our company is Valhalla Business Advisors. You can find us on our website at www.valhallaba.com, BA as in business advisors. And we're operating nationally at this point. So, but we're all at this particular moment located in Pennsylvania. So yeah, I'd love to connect with people that are interested, Nate. And I will circle back with you offline after this around the Spooky Nook event. And it'd be great to meet you, trade business cards and stuff,
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll make sure that I'll check the calendar to make sure I'm in that area because I don't live that far away and I do a lot of work in Lancaster. So it's not that hard to get over there. So
yeah. And I'll be interested in following up with you separately too, to see if there are any introductions I can make that would help you with your business. I have an idea around some unique wine products that I'll touch base with you and see if you're interested in connecting. Okay.
I love outside the box. I love the word. Anytime you say I got a unique idea, I'm in. So,
okay. Let's get meeting you, Nate. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You take care. You have a good rest of your day. If you have a story to share or you know someone with an inspiring journey, the FreeMind Podcast wants to hear from you. Submit your story or nominate somebody to be our next guest. Check out our website, thefreemindpodcast.com, and be a part of the conversation that truly matters.